Hey guys, welcome to the show. I'm Josh, and today I'm going to teach you how to make no-bake Nutella cheesecakes. I found the recipe on mybakingaddiction.com. They got lots of great recipes for things you can bake, so make sure to check it out. And we're going to start by me teaching how to make whipped cream. So the first thing to do is to make sure that the bowl and whisk have been iced to make them very cold, which helps to thicken the cream. So pull them out of the freezer. And iced bowl, iced whisk. And then you want to make sure the cream is cold. So I'm going to pull the heavy whipping cream out, which is cold. And now we start. Now you want 1 cup of the heavy whipping cream. So just open it up and pour it in. That's 1 cup. And then you want to start whisking. You just whisk it until it's right about to start making stiff peaks, but before it actually has. So we're just going to stir this up with a whisk for a few minutes until it starts to get that way. Alright, so this is about where you want it to be when you add in the other stuff. Now I did switch to one of these. You can do it with a whisk, which is what I was going to do, but it does take a long time, and just for the sake of time I decided to switch to this. So if you're in a rush, you want to do it fast, a mixer always works. Alright, so you want to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. You also want to add 1 tablespoon of confectioner's sugar. There's that. And then turn this on. It's imperative that you don't overbeat it. So you want to do it probably a little longer than it just did for me. Okay, so it's done. Alright, so the whipped cream is done, and the reason that I homemade whipped cream as opposed to just buying the prepackaged stuff is because A, this is much better for you, B, it does not have any fructose or corn syrup, and while doing the show, I'm going to try to stay away from fructose and corn syrup and things that I'm baking. My mom can't have it, and so I'm baking with things that don't have it so she can try it. And also, I think that's a interesting way to go. So, you know, some of the things in this have been substituted from the original recipe in order to keep away from fructose and corn syrup. Alright, so now that the whipped cream is done, we move on to the actual cheesecake. Alright, so then we have these 100-calorie Oreo Thin Crisps that we're going to use in place of the Oreos for the crust because there is no corn syrup or fructose in these, and there is in actual Oreos. And we're just going to use a roller, and we're just going to get this into little crumbs. So we're just going to first just beat it down a bit, and then just roll over it. Alright, so now we're actually going to create the crust. We need 3 tablespoons of melted butter, which I pre-measured out and melted. And then you pour in the crumbs that you made. Now I actually have more crumbs than I was supposed to have. No measured amount on the recipe for this. So I chose to make it a little bit more brittle and just to dump it all in. If you want it less so, I would just say pour in the crumbs slowly. And again, I have bigger crumbs in here as well. You can use smaller crumbs, which works just fine. So now is the part where I take the crust that I've made, the mixture of the crust I've made, I should say, and I put it into the bottom of the cups that I'll be using. I should mention this is individual cheesecake. This is not for a big one. This is for making individuals. And you just kind of put it into the bottom. It doesn't really matter how thick it is. It's up to you. I'm going a little thicker, but I'm also not measuring out, so they'll be slightly different thicknesses. Okay, so now we start on the actual cheesecake. So start by getting a bowl out, and we open up the cream cheese. It doesn't really matter, it just needs to be plain cream cheese, doesn't matter what brand or anything else, and none of it has corn syrup or anything like that. You just take off that and then empty into the bowl. And now, we'll boil over it, just make sure no ants or anything got into it for any reason. We got the Nutella. And grab a plastic spoon to empty it into here with so that I'm not dirtying too many dishes, as I am the one that has to clean the dishes. So now you mix in the vanilla extract. Do 1 teaspoon. And just do this until it's kind of combined through it. And then you mix in your homemade whipped cream. So you can, the recipe actually calls for 1 cup of the whipped cream. If you put in as much as I did, it still works, just makes it a little creamier, and but it still works just fine if you want to put in less so that it's strong Nutella flavor. Ideally, you would have something to actually pipe it on there, but since I don't, just use an ice cream scoop, do it one at a time, and it'll just look a little bit poofier. Again, you can measure them out as evenly as you want, or do what I'm doing and just kind of plop them in there. It doesn't really matter as long as you get the amount of servings that you so desire. Now, so 6 of these, that's because there were 6 people in my family. My 2 brothers, my parents, me, and my brother's fiance, Jessica. This recipe is set actually to make 6, so if you wanted more, you'll have to do the math on your own to figure out how much to put in for making more. Alright, so the basic part of the cheesecake is done, and now we work on the garnish. Alright, so the next thing to do is for the garnish. I just made some more whipped cream, by the way, to use the other. And I'm just going to start smashing nuts. I'm just using a knife and just start smashing the nuts. Go on top of cheesecake. Alright, so now that I've crushed some of those nuts down, I'm going to actually create the garnish, put it together. So start with the whipped cream and just put it on top. You can, if you have something to actually squeeze it out in a pattern, whatever, feel free to do so. I do not, so I will not. And just put all of the whipped cream, just put the whipped cream on each one. Make sure that you have enough whipped cream to go through all of them. Alright, so now that the whipped cream is on there, just take some of the crushed nuts and just sprinkle them on. You just use your fingers and just sprinkle them on. You probably don't want to do a ton of them, just a little bit. And move on to putting the chocolate chips on, which is the last part of the garnish. Alright guys, the last part of the garnish is to put on some chocolate chips. And you don't want too many, especially since you have chocolate on every layer of it. You don't need a ton of chocolate. Just kind of enough to make this topping a little bit sweeter, because especially with it being homemade whipped cream, it's not quite as sweet as the stuff you buy in the store. So you want to make it a little sweeter. Alright. And now, these just go in the fridge for 2 hours and you're done.